The day my daughter-in-law fired me was the day I realized how quickly loyalty turns into liability in the corporate world. I'd given 25 years of my life to Fairchild and Mason, long before the marble floors, the corporate jets, and the kind of board meetings that serve champagne instead of coffee. When I started, we were just a small family-run business on the south side of Chicago, built on trust, grit, and late nights. I was proud of what we built. When Richard Mason, the founder, passed away, control went to his only daughter, Vanessa. She also happened to be my daughter-in-law, married to my son Jacob. I thought it was fate, honestly. She was sharp, confident, and had a presence that filled a room. I truly believed she'd lead the company into a golden age. I couldn't have been more wrong. It started slowly, subtle shifts in tone, priorities, values. The old loyalty was replaced by buzzwords, synergy, restructuring, modernization. A parade of consultants swept through the building, talking fast and spending faster. Suddenly, the faces that built this company were gone. Retiring early, they said. Transitioning to new ventures. But we all knew what that meant. Still, I told myself change was necessary. I'd weathered recessions and layoffs before. This felt different though, colder, calculated. And Vanessa, she thrived in it. She flashed that icy smile during board meetings and talk about efficiency, all while carving up the family legacy her father left behind. Then came the night that changed everything. I was alone in my office, the city lights flickering through the blinds, when I noticed something off in the quarterly reports. A $2.4 million consulting payment to a vendor I didn't recognize. I dug deeper. The vendor didn't exist, at least not on paper. What did exist, though, was a matching account tied to Vanessa's private trust. For a while, I just stared at the numbers, trying to convince myself it was a mistake. Maybe an accounting error. But deep down I knew. The next morning, I walked into her office with the file in hand. She barely looked up from her laptop when I spoke. "Vanessa, we need to talk," I said. "Make it quick," she replied. "I have an investor lunch in 10 minutes. There's something wrong with these transactions. I found several payments that don't match any legitimate vendor." Her smile never wavered, but her eyes hardened. "Linda," she said slowly, "you're very good at your job, but you're also overstepping." "Overstepping?" I repeated. "I'm doing what I was hired to do. Protect this company's finances." "Then protect it by staying in your lane," she said. "Focus on your department and let me handle the rest." I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of what she'd just said. It wasn't a request, it was a warning. When I left her office, something in me shifted. That was the moment I knew the woman running Fairchild and Mason wasn't the same one who'd stood in front of our family years ago, promising to honor her father's legacy. She wasn't protecting the company. She was gutting it for her own gain. A week later, a calendar invite appeared. Board meeting, mandatory attendance. I'd attended hundreds before, but this one felt different. When I walked into the boardroom that morning, the air was thick with tension. Vanessa sat at the head of the table, poised and perfect, a glass of sparkling water in front of her. Beside her stood the HR director and 2 security guards, both men I'd hired years ago. "Let's keep this short," she said, smiling like she was announcing a promotion. "As part of our restructuring efforts, certain legacy roles are being consolidated. Linda, your position is one of them." The room went still. She continued, "Effective immediately, your employment with Fairchild and Mason is terminated. You'll have 3 minutes to collect your belongings." 3 minutes. I didn't say a word. I just stared at her, letting the silence do what words couldn't. Then I smiled, a small, deliberate smile, and said thank you. Her expression faltered for half a second before she regained control. But by then it was too late. I stood, adjusted my blazer, and walked toward the door. Behind me, a chair scraped against the floor. Then another. One by one, 37 of my colleagues, people I'd worked beside for years, stood and followed me out. Vanessa's smug look melted into panic. The last thing I saw before the door shut was her face turning pale as the company's legal director leaned over and whispered something that made her freeze. Outside, the autumn air hit me like a slap. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, watching as more employees trickled out of the building, some in tears, some defiant. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages poured in. We're with you, Linda. She's gone too far. You built this place. And sitting there, surrounded by 25 years of memories and betrayal, I made a choice. I wasn't going to crawl away quietly. I was going to make her regret underestimating me. Hey, before I go on, these stories take days to write, edit, and record. If you're still reading this far, do me a favor, tap subscribe. It's free for you, but it keeps stories like this alive. Thanks for supporting the time and heart it takes to tell them. I didn't plan to lash out right away. Revenge, I decided, had to be strategic, clean, professional. Before I left, I'd copied every file, every report, every email chain from the company servers. Years of data, tucked safely on an encrypted drive in my purse. I started quietly. A few phone calls to trusted friends in Chicago's business network. I didn't accuse anyone directly. I simply expressed concern about irregularities. That's all it took. Rumors started to ripple through downtown. Investors began asking questions. Then I reached out to Dana Price, an investigative journalist I'd met years ago at a charity gala. I sent her just enough to spark curiosity. Nothing illegal, nothing traceable. She promised to look into it. Within 2 weeks, Fairchild and Mason's reputation began to crack. A short piece in Crane's Chicago Business mentioned possible internal inconsistencies in their financial structure. Another article followed, naming a consulting firm suspiciously tied to shell companies. Then came the call that confirmed everything was unfolding exactly as it should. Mrs. Fairchild, a voice said over the line, "This is Agent Monroe with the IRS Corporate Investigations Unit. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your former employer." I nearly laughed out loud. A week later, Vanessa showed up at my house in Winnetka. No appointment, no warning. Just rage and panic wrapped in designer wool. She stood on my porch, eyes red, makeup smudged. "Linda," she said, trying to sound calm, "we need to talk." I leaned against the doorframe. "About what?" "You've been talking to people. Investigators. Reporters. You're ruining the company." "My company?" I asked quietly. "The one you forced me out of?" She hesitated. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Then maybe," I said, "you shouldn't have started it." I closed the door. As it clicked shut, I heard her mutter through gritted teeth, "This isn't over." That night, I found an unmarked envelope pushed through my mail slot. No return address, just my name in block letters. Inside was a USB drive and a single note. "You should see what she's hiding next." I stared at it for a long time before plugging it in. The folder opened automatically, dozens of files, contracts, emails. And within minutes, I realized this wasn't just embezzlement. It was fraud. Serious, federal-level fraud. Someone out there wanted me to finish what I'd started, and I was about to find out who. If you were in my shoes, would you have walked away quietly or fought back the way I did? Ever had someone betray you at work or in your own family? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. The USB drive sat on my kitchen table like a loaded gun. I stared at it for a long time, coffee gone cold beside me. Whoever sent it knew things they shouldn't have known, things only someone on the inside could access. It was nearly midnight in Winnetka, the kind of quiet where you can hear the lake breeze tapping against the windows. My cat, Pepper, curled up on the counter, blinking lazily, completely unaware that my life was shifting again, this time into dangerous territory. I finally double-clicked the first file. It was an email chain between Vanessa and someone from the consulting firm she'd hired. They were discussing asset diversion and offshore account structuring, corporate lingo for laundering money. The next document was worse, an internal memo signed by Vanessa herself, authorizing the transfer of client funds into a Cayman Islands subsidiary. But that wasn't even the kicker. Attached was a digital signature from the company's legal director, Michael Reyes. Michael had been one of the 37 who walked out with me. I felt my stomach drop. Either someone forged his signature, or he wasn't the ally I thought he was. I closed the laptop and leaned back, trying to process. Every instinct in me screamed to call Dana, the journalist. But something told me to hold off. If someone went through the trouble of sending me this, there was more to uncover, and I needed to know who was feeding me this information before I made any moves. The next morning, I drove downtown to meet Dana anyway. We met at a small cafe in Lincoln Park, one of those cozy spots where the coffee's too strong and everyone pretends not to eavesdrop. She spotted me right away, waved me over, and closed her laptop. "You look like you haven't slept," she said. "I haven't," I replied, sliding the envelope toward her. She frowned. "This from your old office?" "No, it was delivered last night." She plugged the USB into her laptop, brows furrowed, as she skimmed through the files. "Jesus, Linda," she whispered. "If this is real, it's not just mismanagement. It's wire fraud, securities violations, maybe even racketeering." "I know," I said quietly, "but here's what's strange. Some of these signatures, like Michael Reyes's, don't make sense." Dana's expression darkened. "You think someone's setting you up?" "I think someone's setting someone up," I said. "I just don't know who yet." We agreed to keep it under wraps until she verified the documents. She promised to loop in a forensic accountant she trusted. I left the cafe feeling equal parts relieved and terrified. That night, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in years, Michael Reyes. "Linda," he said the moment I answered, his voice low. "We need to talk. It's about Vanessa." I hesitated. "Are you the one who sent me the USB?" He was silent for a long beat before exhaling. "Not exactly, but I know who did." He refused to say more over the phone and insisted we meet in person. We agreed on a quiet spot, an old park near Evanston where the company used to hold summer picnics. When I got there, the benches were empty except for him. He looked older than I remembered, more tired, like the last few months had aged him a decade. "Vanessa's in trouble," he said without preamble. "Serious trouble. And not just from the feds. There are people she owes money to. Big money. You getting fired wasn't just personal, it was insurance. She wanted you gone before the fallout hit." I crossed my arms. "And the USB? That came from her assistant, Clara," he said. "She found files Vanessa kept hidden in a private server. Clara's terrified, so she sent them to you anonymously, hoping you'd know what to do." That made sense. Clara had always been quiet, observant, the type to notice things others didn't. "But here's the thing," Michael continued, looking around nervously. "If Vanessa finds out Clara went behind her back, she'll ruin her. She's already trying to pin the missing funds on me. She forged my signature on half those authorizations." I felt the air go out of me. "Michael, I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quickly. "I just thought you should know the real story. You're the only person with enough credibility to stop her before she drags everyone down with her." That night, I sat in my car long after he'd left, watching the trees sway under the streetlights. If everything he said was true, Vanessa's empire wasn't just built on greed. It was built on lies, fear, and stolen trust. The next morning, I forwarded copies of the USB files to Dana, labeling each forged signature I recognized. She replied almost instantly. "You were right. The digital metadata's been altered. The timestamps are off by hours. Someone definitely tried to manipulate this." That confirmed it. Vanessa wasn't just crooked, she was desperate. A few days later, news broke that the IRS had formally opened an investigation into Fairchild and Mason. Their headquarters in downtown Chicago was swarming with agents. The story hit every major outlet within hours. Vanessa's face was suddenly everywhere, on TV, in newspapers, splashed across online business forums under headlines like "CEO under federal investigation for financial misconduct." Jacob, my son, called me that same afternoon. His voice was strained, like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. "Mom," he said quietly, "is it true?" I didn't know what to tell him. Part of me wanted to protect him, but another part, the part that had been humiliated in that boardroom, wanted him to finally see who he'd married. "It's true," I said finally, "but it's worse than what's on the news." He sighed long and heavy. "She told me you were behind it, that you've been feeding lies to reporters because you were bitter about being fired." I felt something twist in my chest. "Do you believe that?" A long pause. Then, softly, "I don't know what to believe anymore." He hung up before I could answer. That night, I sat on the couch staring at the dark window reflection, wondering how much of my family I was about to lose before this was over. The revenge had started as a quiet push for justice, but now it was bleeding into every corner of my life, my marriage, my motherhood, my peace. The next morning, I woke to another envelope at my doorstep. This one wasn't plain. It had a Fairchild and Mason letterhead, stamped confidential. My heart pounded as I tore it open. Inside was a single piece of paper, a subpoena. Vanessa was officially suing me for defamation. And under it, in smaller print, was the name of the representing law firm, one I recognized instantly. It was Michael Reyes's new employer. My hands went numb. I grabbed my phone, called him, but it went straight to voicemail. Something wasn't right. By evening, Dana called with a new update. "Linda," she said, voice tense, "the files we verified? They're gone. Deleted from our cloud backup. Someone wiped the records clean." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Can you recover them?" "We're trying, but whoever did this knew what they were doing. It's not just a random hack." I looked around my quiet house, suddenly hyper-aware of every shadow, every creak in the floorboards. Someone was trying to erase the evidence, erase me. And if Vanessa was behind it, this had officially gone beyond corporate payback. It was war. The subpoena felt heavier than it should have. One page, a few sentences, but the weight of it sat like lead in my hands. I read the first line over and over. Fairchild and Mason, LLC versus Linda Fairchild, defamation, interference with business and breach of confidentiality. Vanessa wasn't just trying to scare me. She was trying to bury me alive under legal fees. I called my old friend, Robert Kane, a retired attorney who'd handled the company's legal affairs years ago, before Vanessa brought in her own team. He was living out in Naperville now, semi-retired and enjoying golf too much to care about corporate drama. But when I told him what was happening, his voice turned sharp. "She's bluffing," he said. "If the investigation is active, she can't risk discovery. Filing a lawsuit opens her books to scrutiny." "She's desperate," I said. "That's the problem." He sighed. "Then she's dangerous too." Robert agreed to represent me pro bono, at least to get the case off the ground. He warned me to stay quiet, no statements to the press, no more leaks to Dana, nothing that could be spun against me. But silence was never my strong suit, especially not when I could see Vanessa's narrative spreading like wildfire online. The day after the subpoena arrived, Fairchild and Mason released a press statement. It was slick, professional, and full of corporate jargon, but the message was clear. I was a bitter ex-employee spreading lies. Every headline echoed the same sentiment. Disgruntled former CFO targets CEO amid investigation. It made me sick. My phone blew up again, but this time with mixed messages. Some colleagues offered quiet support. Others asked me to stop making things worse. Even Jacob called, his voice shaking with anger. "She's losing everything, Mom," he said. "The company's under investigation. Investors are leaving. The media's destroying her. And you're adding fuel to it." "I'm not adding fuel," I said, trying to keep calm. "I'm revealing the fire she started." "You don't know everything," he said sharply. "You think she's some villain, but you don't know what she's been dealing with." I almost laughed. What she's been dealing with? Jacob. She's laundering money through fake firms. She forged signatures, lied to investors, and ruined people's lives, including mine. He didn't respond. Just a soft click as the line went dead. That silence stayed with me longer than I expected. A few days later, Robert called. "The court filing's real," he said. "But here's the interesting part. She's naming the journalists too. Dana Price, and the anonymous sources." I froze. "She's going after Dana?" "Looks that way. She's accusing you two of conspiring." "Conspiring to what?" "Tell the truth." "Unfortunately," he said dryly, "that's not a legal defense in her world. I called Dana right away, but she already knew." "I've dealt with bullies like her before," she said. "They make noise to intimidate you. But the real story isn't going anywhere. I've got backups of the files, offline, old school. She can't erase those." That gave me some relief, but it didn't last long. 2 nights later, I woke up to flashing lights outside my house. At first, I thought it was a car accident. But when I stepped outside, I saw police officers standing in my driveway. Mrs. Fairchild, one asked, his flashlight hitting my eyes. We received a report of a break-in. A break-in? I repeated. Here. He nodded. Neighbor called it in. Said they saw someone leaving through the side gate about 10 minutes ago. My stomach dropped. I walked around the side of the house with them, heart pounding. The gate was open, latch broken. The window to my home office, where I kept the backup drive, was shattered. Inside, drawers were ransacked, papers everywhere. But the drive was gone. I felt my knees go weak. The officer asked if I noticed anything else missing, but I could barely hear him. My mind was spinning. This wasn't random. Someone had come specifically for that data. When they left, I sat on the floor in my robe, glass crunching beneath my hands, staring at the empty spot where the drive used to be. By sunrise, I made one decision: no more playing defense. If Vanessa wanted a war, she just declared it in my own home. I spent the next day digging through old emails and backup folders. I'd been meticulous over the years. Every report I'd ever written, every memo I'd sent, every budget approval, it was all still in my personal archives. Maybe I couldn't prove the offshore accounts yet, but I could prove the patterns, the lies, the inconsistencies. That evening, I drove into the city to meet Robert again. He was waiting for me at a diner on North Michigan Avenue, briefcase open, glasses low on his nose. "Linda," he said, flipping through my printed documents, "this is good, very good. If we can establish a history of manipulation and retaliation, it'll crush her credibility in court. Then we go public," I said. "I want her reputation to burn before she even steps into that courtroom." He raised an eyebrow. "Careful. You're thinking with your anger, not your head." "I've earned my anger," I said quietly. He didn't argue. A few days later, Vanessa made her first public appearance since the investigation began, a press conference outside the company's headquarters. She looked perfect, of course. Power suit, diamond earrings, her hair pulled back so tight it could cut glass. She stood at the podium and painted herself as a victim. "This company has been targeted by false claims and malicious intent," she said. "I will not let slander destroy what my father built." It was nauseating. But as she spoke, I noticed something in the background. Michael Reyes, standing just behind her, expressionless. The man who'd claimed to want to help me. The same man who was now working for her lawyers. So that's what his silence meant. He'd flip sides. That night, I received a single text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have gone to Dana. Now everyone's in danger." No name, no context, just that message. I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. But I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. The next day, Robert called again, his tone urgent. "Linda, we've got another problem. Vanessa's lawyers filed a motion for an injunction. They're trying to freeze your accounts and seize your emails." "On what grounds?" I asked, my voice breaking. "They're claiming you accessed proprietary data illegally. That encrypted drive, they're saying it contained confidential company property." I felt the blood drain from my face. "They broke into my house and stole that drive." "I know," he said, "but proving that's another battle." That evening, I sat alone, watching the sunset bleed into the lake. For the first time, I wondered if I'd pushed too far. Not because I regretted it, but because I realized just how deep Vanessa's influence ran. She wasn't just a ruthless CEO. She was a manipulator with resources, allies, and now control of the narrative. But she'd forgotten one thing. I knew her better than anyone. I'd watched her grow from a bright, hungry woman into a power-obsessed machine. And like every machine that runs too hot, she was bound to overheat. So I did the one thing she'd never expect. I went quiet. No statements, no calls, no leaks, just silence. Because sometimes the loudest revenge is the one they don't see coming. The best revenge doesn't always come from fire. Sometimes it comes from silence, measured, deliberate silence that makes your enemy wonder what you're planning while you quietly lay the groundwork. That's exactly what I did. For 2 weeks after Vanessa's injunction filing, I didn't respond publicly. No comments, no interviews, not even a text to the former colleagues who kept reaching out. I let her bask in her false sense of control. The media painted me as the bitter ex-CFO gone rogue, and she played the victim like she'd been rehearsing it for years. But behind the scenes, I was building my next move. The key was patience. Vanessa thrived on reaction. She'd always been that way. If you pushed back, she pushed harder. If you went quiet, she panicked. Robert had been right about one thing. Filing that lawsuit opened her books to scrutiny. Even if she tried to restrict discovery, certain financial disclosures would be mandatory. And the longer the investigation stayed active, the more people would start looking where she didn't want them to. So I waited. Then I called in a favor from someone Vanessa never saw coming. Back when I was still with Fairchild and Mason, there was a junior analyst named Erica Chun. Brilliant, underappreciated, and one of the many who retired early when Vanessa started her so-called restructuring. After leaving the company, Erica went to work for the Securities and Exchange Commission in Washington, D.C. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but when I called and explained what was happening, she didn't hesitate. Linda, if even half of what you're saying is true, she said, it's not just corporate misconduct, it's securities fraud. I can't make promises, but I can make sure the right people take a closer look. That's all I needed. A week later, Vanessa received a formal request from the SEC for supplementary documentation related to international subsidiary transfers. I wasn't supposed to know about it, but one of my old contacts in the accounting department tipped me off. Vanessa lost it. She tore into her staff, fired 2 senior managers, and blamed them for mishandling confidential data. Word of her meltdown spread quickly. By the following Monday, her carefully crafted image of control had started to crack. Meanwhile, I quietly met with Dana again. We'd both agreed to stay low profile, but she had new information. Someone inside Fairchild and Mason is still feeding me updates, she said. Anonymous emails, time-stamped with internal calendar invites. Whoever it is, they're close to Vanessa. Clara. I asked immediately. Dana nodded. Most likely. She's playing with fire, though. Vanessa's paranoid. She started running background checks on her own staff. I stared at my coffee, thinking. She's unraveling. Dana leaned in. That's good for you. It's dangerous for everyone else, I said quietly. The next few weeks were chaos for Vanessa. The press kept digging. Investors started demanding emergency meetings. The board called for an independent audit, which meant outside accountants were coming in. People she couldn't manipulate or fire. Robert was thrilled. This is it, he told me over the phone. She's boxed in. Let her trip over her own arrogance. But Vanessa wasn't done fighting. Late one night, I got another message from Jacob. Short, clipped, angry. Mom, she says you're trying to destroy her. I can't keep living like this. I stared at the screen, not sure how to respond. The truth was, I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted accountability. But in his eyes, maybe those two things looked the same. Before I could reply, he sent another text. She's not who you think she is, and you're not the victim you pretend to be. That one hurt. I didn't answer. I just turned off my phone and went for a walk down by the lake, where the air was colder than I expected and the wind bit through my jacket. I needed to remind myself why I started this, to protect the people she was stepping on, not just to get even. But somewhere along the line, the two had started to blur. The next morning, Robert called with news that jolted me awake. The court denied her injunction, he said, sounding pleased, which means your accounts are safe. But they did order limited discovery. That means she'll have to turn over some financials, right? Exactly. And once that happens, she's exposed. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. But peace didn't last long. 3 days later, Erica from the SEC called me again. You didn't hear this from me, she said carefully, but Fairchild and Mason's legal team is stalling. They're claiming a data breach compromised their records, and they can't verify certain transactions. A data breach? I repeated. You mean the one she staged? Probably, Erica said. But here's the thing, we got a flagged report from one of their international banks in Zurich. Large transfers traced to an entity registered under a completely different name. It's a ghost company, Linda, and whoever owns it, it's not on any of their official disclosures. My heart started racing. Can you trace it back to her? We're working on it, she said. But I thought you'd want to know there's movement. Big movement. That was the moment I knew Vanessa was spiraling. She wasn't just covering her tracks anymore. She was trying to move money before everything crashed. The following weekend, Dana published a new piece, not directly naming Vanessa, but hinting heavily that Fairchild and Mason executives had begun redistributing assets offshore. The internet did what the internet does best. It connected the dots. By Monday morning, hashtag Vanessa Mason was trending on Twitter. Her name was everywhere alongside words like embezzlement, fraud, and cover-up. That's when she broke her silence. She went live on CNBC for an interview. Her tone was calm, confident, and perfectly rehearsed. These allegations are baseless, she said. It's heartbreaking that people are trying to tarnish my family's name, especially someone I once considered family. The interviewer leaned in. You're referring to your former mother-in-law? She smiled thinly. Let's just say betrayal hurts most when it comes from within. My phone exploded. Friends, reporters, even distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, all calling or texting, wanting my side. Robert advised me not to respond. She wants you emotional, he warned. Let her talk herself into a corner. So I stayed silent. Again. But this time, I started planning my counterstrike. If Vanessa wanted to play the media game, I'd play smarter. I reached out to an old contact at a nonprofit financial ethics group in D.C. They'd helped whistleblowers before. People much bigger than me, facing corporations much worse than Vanessa's. I explained the situation, sent redacted documents, and asked them to independently verify everything. Within a week, they were interested. 2 of their analysts confirmed that the offshore accounts were indeed connected to shell companies linked to Fairchild and Mason's transactions. The final piece fell into place when one of them found a signature, Vanessa's, digital and time-stamped. I sent the report to Dana. If you run this, I told her, make sure it's airtight. I don't want to give her even an inch to spin it. She nodded. Don't worry. This time, she won't recover. When the article went live, it was devastating. It didn't accuse, it proved. It included excerpts of official banking data, forensic verification, and a timeline that matched her own press statements. Vanessa went radio silent. The next day, her legal team withdrew part of their lawsuit. Robert called, laughing in disbelief. You did it, he said. She's cornered. But even as he celebrated, I couldn't shake a strange feeling. It wasn't satisfaction, it was something heavier. Because I knew Vanessa wouldn't go down quietly. She never did. That evening, I received one last message, no text, no call, just a small box left on my doorstep. Inside was a single photograph. It was me, standing outside the SEC building earlier that week. On the back, written in black marker, were the words, "Stay out of this, or next time it's not just your career." I stared at it until my hands started to shake. This wasn't business anymore. It was personal. When you've been in business long enough, you learn to recognize patterns, the rise, the fall, the panic. But nothing prepares you for the moment those patterns start bleeding into your personal life. That's what happened after the box showed up. At first, I told myself it was just meant to scare me. Maybe someone from Vanessa's team trying to send a message. But the photo, the fact that it had been taken without me noticing, meant something else entirely. Someone was following me. Robert told me to go to the police, so I did. I filed a report, gave them the box, and explained what was happening. The officer who took my statement was polite, but I could see it in his eyes. He thought I was being paranoid. Do you have any idea who might have left it? He asked. Plenty, I said. But the list starts with my daughter-in-law. He tried to hide a smirk. Your daughter-in-law. I leaned forward. My billionaire daughter-in-law. That got his attention. Still, there wasn't much they could do. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no cameras nearby. Just a photo and my word. So, I changed my locks, installed security cameras, and started keeping the curtains closed. I wasn't afraid, not exactly, but I was alert in a way I hadn't been since my early years in finance, when one wrong move could cost you everything. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Vanessa hadn't responded publicly to the article, and the press was beginning to speculate that she'd either resigned or was being pushed out. But the company's board stayed silent. No press release, no updates, nothing. Then, out of nowhere, Jacob called. His voice was raw, exhausted. Mom, what did you do? What do you mean? She's losing everything. The board suspended her this morning. They froze her accounts. People are saying you leaked confidential data. I didn't leak anything that wasn't already verified, I said carefully. She did this to herself. He laughed bitterly. You keep saying that, but you don't see the mess you're creating. The house is surrounded by reporters. She's not eating, not sleeping, she's falling apart. Jacob, I said softly, I know this is hard, but maybe it's time you stop protecting her. Protecting her? His voice cracked. She's my wife. I didn't respond. Because deep down, I knew that if I said what I really thought, that he was protecting the person who destroyed everything we'd built, it might be the last conversation we'd ever have. He hung up without another word. That night, my security camera caught movement near the back gate. A tall figure, wearing a hood, standing still for nearly 2 minutes before disappearing into the darkness. The next morning, I sent the footage to Robert and to the detective handling my case. Still, there was nothing they could do. Meanwhile, the investigation into Fairchild and Mason picked up speed. The SEC had launched a formal inquiry, and federal auditors were combing through years of records. Erica called to let me know it was escalating faster than anyone expected. Linda, she said, if what we're seeing pans out, there's going to be a criminal case. Wire fraud, maybe even racketeering. I should have felt relief, but instead, I felt this strange numbness. Like after all the chaos, I couldn't quite believe justice might actually happen. Then, 2 days later, I got another delivery. No note, no return address. Just a USB drive in a plain envelope. Robert insisted we check it in his office instead of my home. So that afternoon, I drove downtown and met him in his conference room. He plugged the drive into an isolated laptop. At first, it looked empty, just a folder labeled Truth. He clicked it open. Inside were dozens of PDFs, photos, and scanned documents. Financial records, email threads, legal memos. Some of them were from years ago, well before Vanessa even took over. What the hell is this? I asked. Robert scrolled slowly, his brow furrowing. This looks like proof she was involved in insider trading before she became CEO. Stock movements, leaks to partners. Linda, this is huge. Where did it come from? No idea. But whoever sent it knows exactly what they're doing. We looked through everything for nearly an hour. The deeper we went, the worse it got. Fraudulent filings, shell company registrations, even communications with the senator's campaign fund that hinted at illegal donations. It was enough to blow the case wide open. But that wasn't what scared me. What scared me was the final file, a single audio recording labeled Boardroom. Robert clicked play. The voice was unmistakable. Vanessa. Her tone was calm, but icy. I don't care what the numbers say. If anyone questions the transfers, you tell them it's part of the restructuring. And if anyone leaks information, you know what to do. There was silence, then another voice. A man's, nervous. What about Linda? Vanessa laughed. She's old. Sentimental. She'll make it easy for herself. My chest tightened. Robert paused the recording and looked at me. Linda, this is the nail in the coffin. But whoever sent this, how do they even have access? I don't know, I whispered. Maybe someone on the inside. He nodded slowly. Then they're taking a huge risk. We decided to hand everything over to the SEC. But before we could, Robert's office received an anonymous email. It read, "Don't trust anyone at Fairchild and Mason. She's not the only one involved." Attached was a photo of Vanessa shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize, somewhere overseas, in what looked like a private hangar. Robert sighed, closing the laptop. This is bigger than her, Linda. This might be a whole network. Then let's burn the whole thing down, I said. He smiled grimly. Careful what you wish for. That night, for the first time in months, I allowed myself to sleep through the night. But by morning, my inbox was full of messages. Headlines everywhere. Fairchild and Mason CEO under federal investigation. Sources claim insider trading at billion-dollar firm. And one that made my stomach drop. Exclusive. Secret recordings implicate CEO in fraud and retaliation. Someone had leaked the USB drive's contents to the press before we did. Robert called within minutes. It's out, he said. Everything. I don't know who did it, but it's everywhere. And just like that, Vanessa's empire started to crumble in real time. The board called an emergency meeting. The company's stock dropped 27% in a single day. The press camped outside her house. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel triumph. Just exhaustion. I'd spent so long fighting her that I'd forgotten what peace even looked like. Still, there was one thing I hadn't done yet. One truth I hadn't faced. Jacob. I called him, but this time he didn't answer. So I drove to their house, past the reporters, past the cameras, up the long driveway that had once felt like a symbol of success. The lights inside were off, the gates slightly open. I knocked, waited. Nothing. When I finally stepped inside, I found the house half empty. Boxes stacked in the foyer, clothes scattered on the floor, papers shredded in the kitchen. She was gone. Vanessa had fled. Robert confirmed it the next day. The SEC can't find her. She withdrew what was left of her personal funds and disappeared. No travel logs, no flight records. Nothing. I didn't say anything. I just stared out the window, watching rain streak down the glass. After everything, she'd slipped through our fingers. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 25 years of building something from nothing, it had all come crashing down, not because of greed, not even betrayal, but because of pride. And maybe that's what stung the most. She'd rather vanish than face the truth. Sometimes, when I think about it, I wonder if that's why revenge stories hit people so hard. It's not about watching someone fall. It's about finally seeing someone admit they were wrong. And in this story, I wasn't sure anyone ever would. If you've read this far, thank you. It takes hours of writing, revising, and reliving to share the story in detail. So if you're still here, maybe hit that follow or subscribe button. It's a small thing for you, but it means everything to me after all the time I've spent piecing this together. I thought it was over. For weeks, there was nothing but silence, no more headlines, no phone calls from lawyers, no new threats on my doorstep. It was like the storm had finally passed. I went back to small things, morning walks along Lake Michigan, Sunday dinners with old friends, and long afternoons sitting on the porch just breathing. But peace doesn't always mean safety. It started with a message from an unfamiliar number. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But then I saw the name at the bottom. Meet me at the old Fairchild warehouse. Alone. You deserve to hear the truth. Vanessa. I stared at the screen for a full minute before my hands started trembling. The warehouse, she meant, was one of the original company properties, a brick building on the edge of Chicago's industrial district that we'd used back in the early days for shipping and storage. It had been closed for years, but I still knew the place like the back of my hand. Robert told me not to go. It's not safe, he said. If she's desperate enough to flee the country, she's desperate enough to do something worse. He wasn't wrong, but something inside me needed closure. I needed to look her in the eye and hear it, from her lips, why she destroyed everything her father, my husband, and I had built. So, the next morning I drove out there. The building looked abandoned, windows boarded, rust creeping over the old steel sign. I parked across the street and waited for a few minutes before stepping inside. The air was stale and heavy. Dust coated everything. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped from a broken pipe. And then I saw her. Vanessa stood near the old office, wearing a dark coat, her hair pulled back messily. Not at all like the immaculate CEO who once ruled over marble boardrooms. She looked smaller, thinner, almost fragile, but her eyes still had that sharp, calculating glint. Linda, she said softly, like we were old friends catching up. Vanessa. She gestured to a chair. You came. I shouldn't have, I said, but I sat anyway. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us like a rope pulled too tight. Then she exhaled, her shoulders sagging. They're coming for me, she said. The SEC, the board, the banks. They're freezing everything. I have nothing left. You did that to yourself, I said. Her lips twitched. You really believe that, don't you? I don't need to believe it, I said. It's the truth. She looked down at the floor. You think I wanted any of this? You think I enjoyed tearing the company apart? Yes, I said without hesitation. You thrived on control. You loved it. Her head snapped up. I loved saving it. That made me pause. Saving it. She nodded slowly. When I took over after Dad died, the company was already drowning in debt. You didn't see it because he kept you shielded. The old contracts, the loans. He borrowed against everything to keep it running. I inherited a sinking ship. So, yes, I moved money. I restructured. I did what I had to do. I leaned forward. By laundering funds through shell companies? By lying to your board? She didn't answer right away. It wasn't supposed to go that far. I could tell she believed that, or at least wanted to. I wanted to fix it, she continued quietly. But when the first lie worked, the second one was easier. And then I couldn't stop. Every quarter, I told myself just one more adjustment, one more transfer, and then I'll come clean. But the more success we had, the more people I had to keep quiet. She laughed bitterly. You know the worst part? I actually thought I was doing good. I looked at her, this woman who had once stood in my office doorway, asking for mentorship, eager to prove herself, and all I saw now was a ghost of that ambition twisted into obsession. You destroyed everything, I said softly. Not just the company, our family. Her eyes glistened. Jacob left me. I felt my chest tighten. Where is he? I don't know, she said. After the investigation hit, he packed a bag and walked out. Didn't even say goodbye. For the first time, I saw something real in her face. Not pride, not arrogance, just pure, raw loneliness. Why did you call me here, Vanessa? I asked finally. She hesitated, then pulled an envelope from her coat pocket and slid it across the dusty desk toward me. Because there's one thing you don't know. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A wire transfer receipt from my late husband's private account. It was dated 3 months before his death. The recipient, the same offshore company we'd traced to Vanessa. I looked up sharply. What is this supposed to mean? It means, she said quietly, he started it. Not me. My stomach dropped. He created the first shell, she said. Dad used it to hide the losses from you. When he died, I found everything, and instead of shutting it down, I used it. I expanded it. I told myself I was preserving his legacy, but I was really just preserving the lie. The room spun for a second. You're lying. I'm not. I didn't know what to say. For years, I'd idolized my husband as the moral backbone of the company, the man who taught us that integrity mattered more than profit. The thought of him being involved in fraud felt impossible. You expect me to believe this? I said, my voice breaking. Vanessa reached into her bag again and placed an old flash drive on the desk. There's proof on there. Emails, account logs, everything. I stared at it like it might bite me. I don't want your files, I said. I want the truth. That is the truth, she said. But no one will believe it coming from me. For a long moment, we just sat there, the only sound the faint hum of the city beyond the warehouse walls. Finally, she stood. I'm leaving the country. There's nothing left for me here. But I needed you to know I wasn't the only villain in this story. Vanessa, I said, standing too. Running won't fix anything. She looked back at me, eyes hollow. Neither will staying. And just like that, she walked away. I didn't try to stop her. When I got home, I stared at the flash drive for hours. I wanted to throw it in the trash, pretend I never saw it. But curiosity and dread gnawed at me until I couldn't stand it. I plugged it in. And what I found shattered everything I thought I knew about my husband, about our company, and about how far the rot had gone. Emails, dated as far back as 2002. Financial transfers to multiple shadow accounts. His name on every single one. It was all true. I sat there for a long time, crying, not the loud, cinematic kind, but the quiet, empty kind that leaves you hollow. Because in that moment, I realized Vanessa wasn't wrong about one thing. The lie had started long before her. She just inherited it. And maybe in her own twisted way, she thought she was protecting what we built. Still, it didn't excuse what she'd done to me, to Jacob, or to the hundreds of people who lost their jobs because of her pride. But for the first time, I felt something unexpected, pity, and maybe even forgiveness. If you were in my shoes, would you destroy the flash drive and let the past die, or expose everything and risk erasing the legacy we all built? I've gone back and forth 100 times, but I still don't know what's right. Tell me what you would have done in the comments, because maybe seeing it from someone else's eyes will help me decide. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. The flash drive sat on my desk like a live grenade, the blue light from the computer screen washing over it. I kept scrolling through the files, emails, financial records, voice memos, hoping I'd misread something, that maybe there was another explanation. But there wasn't. My husband had been the one who created the first offshore shell. He'd hidden losses from the board, moved money to protect the company, and even sent one email to a bank official in Zurich that read, "Keep it quiet. This will be cleaned up when the restructuring is done." The worst part? Some of those emails were addressed to me, except I never received them, which meant either they'd been deleted or he'd used another account. And as I scrolled further, I realized something that made my stomach twist. Vanessa wasn't lying about everything. The corruption had been in the foundation long before she touched it. I'd spent months building a case against her, convinced she'd poisoned something pure. But maybe, just maybe, it had already been rotting for years, and she'd simply carried the infection forward. At around 4 a.m., I poured myself a cup of cold coffee and called Robert. He answered on the second ring, groggy and confused. "Linda? What's wrong?" "I found something," I said. "Something about Frank." That woke him up fast. "Your husband?" "Yes. The flash drive Vanessa gave me. She wasn't bluffing." He started the transfers. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Robert sighed heavily. "Linda, listen to me. Whatever's on that drive, don't share it with anyone yet. Not the SEC, not Dana, not even Erica. If you do, it'll reopen the entire case, and this time you'll be dragged into it." "I can't just sit on this, Robert," I said, pacing. "It's the truth. If my husband was part of it, people deserve to know." "Maybe. But you need to think about what that would do. To you, to Jacob, to the company's employees. You expose this, and you'll destroy everything left standing." His words hit harder than I expected, because deep down I knew he was right. When I finally hung up, I stared at my reflection in the dark window. The woman looking back wasn't the confident executive who'd once run financial reports without flinching. She was tired, haunted, and for the first time, unsure if justice and peace could coexist. By morning, my phone was buzzing again, this time from Dana. "I need to see you," she said. "Now." We met at a small cafe in the West Loop, a place quiet enough for private conversation, but public enough to feel safe. She looked pale, like she hadn't slept either. "I got a message from one of my sources," she said, sliding her phone across the table. On the screen was a blurred photo of Vanessa, taken 2 nights ago, at O'Hare International Airport. "She's still in the country," I whispered. "Worse," Dana said. "She's not trying to leave. She's trying to make a deal." "With who?" Dana hesitated. "Federal prosecutors. She's offering them evidence in exchange for immunity." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Evidence?" "She's going to use the flash drive." Dana shook her head. "She can't. You have it. But if she's got copies or something else to trade, they'll take it." "Robert said this case could expand," I murmured. "If she gives them enough, she might walk free." "Exactly." I leaned back, my heart racing. Then I need to get ahead of her. If she turns this around, she'll drag me and Frank down with her. Dana reached across the table. "Linda, be careful. If you go public again, it'll look like retaliation. Let the system handle her." "The system," I said bitterly. "The same system that let her manipulate everyone for years. The same one that laughed when I filed a report." She didn't respond. After we parted, I drove to the old company archives, one of the few buildings still under my access from before I left. Inside, I found what I was looking for: the original ledgers from the early years. Real paper, yellowed with time, handwritten by Frank himself. As I flipped through them, I noticed subtle corrections, tiny wideouts, adjustments to expenses that made no sense. He'd hidden the discrepancies in plain sight. And when I compared those entries to Vanessa's later digital records, the patterns matched perfectly. Like father, like daughter. That realization broke something inside me. I sat there for nearly an hour, surrounded by old invoices and fading ink, wondering if I'd been chasing revenge for the wrong reasons all along. It wasn't just about Vanessa anymore. It was about uncovering the truth that no one wanted to face. Not the company, not the board, not even me. I took photos of the ledgers and went straight to Robert's office. He listened quietly as I laid everything out. The drive, the ledgers, the emails. When I was done, he rubbed his temples. Linda, this changes everything. If what you're saying is accurate, Vanessa could argue she was cleaning up a mess she inherited. That could reduce her criminal liability and open a posthumous fraud case against Frank. I don't care about his reputation, I said, my voice trembling. I care about the truth. He gave me a long, heavy look. Then prepare for consequences. Because if this goes public, you're not walking away untouched. You signed some of those reports, didn't you? The room went quiet. I had signed them, not knowing what was hidden beneath the numbers. But my signature was still there. Robert sighed. Then we tread carefully. I'll reach out to Erica, quietly, and see what she can verify without triggering a new investigation. Do it, I said. That evening, I went home and poured myself a glass of whiskey, something I hadn't done in years. I sat in the dark, watching the city lights flicker against the window, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a victim or a hero. Just human. Flawed. The next day, Erica called. Linda, I've looked at the material you sent Robert, she said cautiously. I can't discuss details, but let's just say you were right. Vanessa didn't create the system. She expanded it. There are signs your husband's accounts were the origin. Can you prove it? Eventually, she said. But that's not all. Vanessa didn't just approach prosecutors. She tried to contact the auditors working with us. They turned her away. Then, 24 hours ago, she vanished again. No confirmed sightings. I rubbed my forehead. She's playing everyone. Maybe. Or maybe she's scared. If she knows we got new evidence, she might think you're trying to pin it all on her. The idea unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. After we hung up, I went to the porch and watched the evening roll in. The October wind carried that sharp, restless chill that always made Chicago feel honest, cold, but real. And for the first time since the boardroom, I realized I didn't hate Vanessa anymore. I didn't forgive her either, but I understood her. She wasn't the villain I'd painted her to be. She was just another casualty of the same system that rewarded ambition and punished honesty. Still, understanding didn't erase accountability. Later that night, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You were right about him." Inside was a single image, Vanessa again, this time sitting in what looked like a motel room, talking to someone whose face was out of frame. Beneath it was one line of text. She has more to lose than you think. No signature. No context. Just that. I stared at it for a long time, feeling that same unease creep back in. Because whoever was sending me these things, they weren't random. They were close. Someone who knew both of us. And if Vanessa hadn't left the country, it meant this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I looked out at the lake, the reflection of city lights shimmering across the water, and whispered to no one in particular, "What are you still hiding, Vanessa?" The night didn't answer, but something deep inside me knew I was about to find out. The photo haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa sitting in that dingy motel room, her face pale under harsh fluorescent light, talking to a shadow I couldn't identify. The subject line of that email, "You were right about him," echoed like a riddle I couldn't solve. Who sent it? And what did they mean? By the next morning, paranoia had set in like a slow fever. I checked my locks twice before making coffee, drew the curtains. Every time a car passed outside, I froze. Robert tried to talk sense into me over the phone. "Linda, you've been under too much stress. Whoever sent that email could be trying to rattle you. Don't take the bait." "I'm not imagining things," I said. "Someone out there knows more than we do. Then let the authorities handle it." I laughed bitterly. "You think the same authorities who ignored our first report are suddenly going to care now?" He didn't answer, and that silence told me everything. I decided to trace the email myself. I wasn't exactly tech savvy, but after decades managing digital ledgers, I knew my way around metadata. The message had been sent from a VPN, bouncing through 3 servers, one of which was based in Denver. Denver. That was where the company's data recovery vendor had been located. The same vendor Vanessa had used for her encrypted backups. Coincidence? I doubted it. So I called Dana. Denver, she said after I told her. That's where IT Logistics kept the recovery servers. They shut down after the investigation started. You think someone's sitting on old files? Or selling them, I said. There was a pause. You think Vanessa's buyer might be one of them? I think whoever she was meeting in that motel might not be a lawyer or a prosecutor. Dana cursed softly. Linda, this could be dangerous. Don't go digging into black market data. But I'd already made up my mind. That afternoon, I booked a flight. Chicago to Denver. One-way ticket. When I landed, the October air was crisp and dry. Mountain cold that felt cleaner than anything I breathed in months. I rented a small car and drove straight to the industrial park listed in the company's old contracts. The IT Logistics building was deserted, the sign half fallen, windows coated in grime. But there was a single car parked out front, a dark SUV with tinted windows. I sat there for 5 minutes, debating whether to turn around. Then the driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, early 40s. I didn't recognize him. He walked toward my car like he'd been expecting me. Mrs. Alden, he asked, stopping a few feet away. My pulse jumped. Who are you? He smiled faintly. A friend of Vanessa's. She said you might come. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Where is she? She's safe, he said. For now. But she's in deeper trouble than you think. And if you're not careful, you will be too. I got out of the car. You sent the email. He nodded. And I'm sending this warning. Vanessa's deal fell through. The prosecutors didn't take her offer, so she went to someone else. Someone else. He leaned closer. Private investors. The kind who buy secrets, not stocks. Cold dread spread through me. You mean she's selling company data? He didn't answer directly. She's desperate, Linda. And desperate people don't think straight. The files she's trying to trade. If they get out, this won't just ruin reputations. It'll destroy lives. Why are you telling me this? Because she trusts you, he said. And because I owe her father. He gave me a chance when no one else would. Frank. The name stung like a slap. You worked for him, I said quietly. He nodded. Security division, back in the early years. Before everything got too big. And what do you want from me now? Stop her, he said simply. She won't listen to me, but she might listen to you. She's staying under an alias at the Wyndham off Colfax Avenue. Room 304. She leaves for a meeting tonight. You've got a few hours. I hesitated. How do I know you're not setting me up? He gave a small, weary smile. You don't. But if you don't go, you'll regret it. He turned and walked away before I could ask another question. I should have gone to the police. I should have called Robert or Dana or anyone. But the truth was, I didn't trust anyone anymore, not even myself. So I went. The Wyndham was a mid-tier hotel near downtown Denver, the kind that catered to traveling salesmen and tired tourists. I walked through the lobby like I belonged there, heart hammering so loud I thought the clerk might hear it. Room 304. The door was slightly ajar. I knocked softly. No answer. Vanessa. I whispered. Nothing. I pushed the door open and froze. The room looked like a storm had torn through it. Paper scattered across the floor, suitcase overturned, lamp broken. And in the middle of it all, on the small table by the bed, was a burner phone still buzzing with incoming messages. The last one read, "You were supposed to meet him an hour ago. Where are you?" Before I could think, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I ducked behind the open bathroom door just as someone entered. A man's voice, low, unfamiliar, muttered something under his breath. Then another voice, calmer, replied, "Check the closet." I held my breath. One of them opened drawers, the sound of papers rustling. My heart pounded so hard it felt like thunder in my chest. Then one of them said, "She's gone." "She can't have gone far," the other replied. "Get the drive. We'll find her later." A few moments later, the door slammed shut. I waited another full minute before moving. My legs shook so badly I could barely stand. I grabbed the burner phone, stuffed a handful of documents into my bag, and slipped out through the side stairwell. Outside, I sat in my car, gasping for air. Whoever those men were, they weren't random. And they definitely weren't law enforcement. I opened the burner phone and scrolled through the texts. Most were one-sided, from a number labeled RM. We have the buyers lined up. Don't screw this up. Payment cleared in crypto. I didn't recognize the initials, but one message stood out, timestamped 2 hours earlier. If she finds out the truth about Frank's second account, we're done. My blood ran cold. Frank's second account? There was another one. Suddenly, everything clicked. The mysterious transfers, the missing records, the inconsistencies Vanessa kept hinting at. It wasn't just about one shell company. There was more money hidden somewhere, and Vanessa had found it. And now, someone else wanted it too. I started the car and drove until I reached a small diner on the edge of town. One of those places that never closes and never asks questions. I ordered coffee and called Dana. Linda? Where are you? Robert's been trying to reach you all day. I'm in Denver, I said quietly. And you were right. Vanessa didn't leave the country, but she's not acting alone. Jesus, Linda, what did you do? I found her motel room. She's gone. 2 men were there looking for something. Probably the same thing she's selling. And Dana. What? She found another account. Frank's second one. Dana was silent for a long time. You need to get out of there. Now. I can't, I said. Not until I find out what's in that account. You're walking into a trap. Maybe. But if Vanessa's about to hand over that data to criminals, it won't just be her downfall. It'll be mine too. Every document, she has ties back to me through the old ledgers. Then what's your plan? I looked down at the phone at the last text from RM and whispered, I'm going to find her before they do. By the time I hung up, dawn was breaking, pink and gold spilling over the Rockies. I sat there for a moment, exhausted but certain of one thing. The line between hunter and hunted had vanished. Vanessa had started as the villain of my story, but now it felt like we were both trapped in the same web, spun long before either of us knew it existed. I just didn't realize yet how close the spider really was. I didn't go back to the hotel. After the men ransacked Vanessa's room, it wasn't safe. Instead, I checked into a tiny roadside motel off I-70 under a fake name, Margaret Dale. The kind of place that didn't care who you were as long as you paid in cash. The door lock stuck a little, and the TV only played static, but it was quiet, and right then, quiet was everything. I spread the documents I'd taken across the small desk under the buzzing fluorescent light. Most of it was routine, invoices, coded transaction lists, but one page caught my eye. It was handwritten, folded twice, tucked inside a financial statement. On it was a list of numbers. A string of 16 digits, a routing code, and the name Fairview Trust, Wilmington, Delaware. My heart skipped. Fairview Trust had handled one of our company's early investment portfolios. I hadn't seen their name in decades. If this was what I thought it was, if this was the second account, it meant Frank hadn't just created one shell company. He'd made an entire network. And if Vanessa had found out, she might have gone to Delaware to access it. I took photos of the note and sent one to Robert with a short message. Need to confirm if Fairview still holds dormant corporate accounts. Confidential. His reply came minutes later. You're in deep water, Linda. Be careful. I'll check quietly. I left Denver before sunrise, driving east for hours. The plains blurred into highway and exhaustion, my thoughts looping between fear, anger, and something that felt dangerously close to guilt. Every mile brought me closer to answers and further from safety. By the time I reached Wilmington, I looked like hell. Hair tied up, dark circles under my eyes, wearing the same clothes from Denver. But I didn't care. I went straight to Fairview Trust's downtown office, a sleek glass building that looked far too pristine to be hiding ghosts from 20 years ago. The woman at reception smiled politely until I gave her the name. Fairview Trust doesn't comment on private client information, she said smoothly. I slid the old ledger photo across the counter. You might want to look again. Her smile faltered. One moment, please. She disappeared into a back room. 10 long minutes passed before another man came out, mid-50s, gray suit, expensive watch, the kind of professional calm that screamed legal counsel. "Mrs. Alden," he said quietly, "let's talk in my office." That was my first red flag. I hadn't told them my name. He led me to a conference room overlooking the city, closed the blinds, and gestured for me to sit. "You've come a long way," he said. "I assume you're here because of your husband's accounts." I nodded slowly. "So they do exist." He studied me for a moment. "I can neither confirm nor deny that officially, but I can tell you this. Mr. Alden was a creative client, the kind who liked to keep contingencies. Meaning there was more than one account, and not all of them were under his name." My pulse jumped. "Then whose?" He hesitated, then slid a printed statement across the table. The account name read, RM Holdings. I froze. RM. The initials from Vanessa's burner phone. "Who has access?" I asked. He leaned back. "Officially? No one. Unofficially? Someone's been trying to gain entry for weeks. Wire attempts, false credentials. We flagged it and froze the account." I swallowed. "Can you tell me how much money we're talking about?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "North of 40 million. $40 million, hidden in an account my husband had created decades ago, now linked to the same initials that had been texting Vanessa. And whoever RM was, they wanted it back." The banker slid another document toward me, a copy of the freeze notice. "We'll need authorization to unseal the record. If you're looking to trace this, bring legal counsel." "And Mrs. Alden?" "Yes." He lowered his voice. "If anyone contacts you about this account, anyone, do not respond. These aren't amateurs. They've been careful. Too careful." I left Fairview Trust with my heart pounding. Outside, the wind off the Delaware River felt colder than it should have. I sat in my car, trying to piece it together. Frank had created RM Holdings. Vanessa discovered it. Now someone, probably connected to her, was trying to access it. Was RM a person? A partner? A front? As I scrolled through my phone, a new message appeared on the burner I'd taken from Vanessa's room. "Did you find it?" No number, just a single message. I typed back before I could think. "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "You know who I am." "We both do." I stared at the screen. My stomach turned. The name RM Holdings flashed through my mind again, and then it hit me. RM Richard Miles, Frank's old attorney. For a second, we just stared at each other, two relics of a world built on greed, both too stubborn to let go. Then headlights swept across the lot. A car pulling in fast, horn blaring. Miles flinched. I used the distraction to roll out from under the trailer and sprint toward the car. The door swung open, and Vanessa was behind the wheel. "Get in," she shouted. I didn't hesitate. I dove inside, slamming the door as she floored the accelerator. Bullets pinged against the rear bumper as we tore out of the lot. "Jesus, Vanessa." I gasped. "You're alive." She shot me a quick, grim smile. "Barely. He tried to grab me at a gas station 2 hours ago." I ditched my phone and doubled back. "I figured he'd find you next." I looked down at the flash drive in my hand. "He said it's got recordings. Insurance files from Frank." She nodded, her jaw tight. "It does. And there's one you need to hear." We drove in silence for nearly an hour before stopping at a rest area near Michigan City. The rain had eased, replaced by low fog curling around the streetlights. Vanessa plugged the flash drive into her laptop, fingers trembling. "I've been sitting on this for months," she said. "I wanted to use it against him, against the board. But after everything, I couldn't bring myself to listen again." She clicked a file labeled Final Meeting, March 2003. Frank's voice filled the car, tinny but unmistakable. "Richard, this is the last transfer. After this, I'm out. If anything happens to me, Linda gets everything but not the account. That stays buried." Then Miles's voice. "You can't do that, Frank. You're signing both our death warrants." "I'm protecting my family," Frank said. "You've gone too far. This ends now." A pause. Then a sound I'll never forget. The click of a gun being cocked. "You don't walk away from this, Frank," Miles said coldly. The recording ended there. My chest felt hollow. "He killed him," I whispered. "My husband didn't die of a heart attack." Vanessa nodded, tears streaking down her face. "He covered it up." Miles made it look natural. I found the autopsy report last year, discrepancies everywhere. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The truth hung between us, heavy, ugly, final. Then I said, quietly, we can't keep this to ourselves anymore. Vanessa looked at me, fear flickering in her eyes. If we release it, we'll both go down with it. My name's on the transfers. Yours is on the reports. He'll drag us through hell before he goes down. Maybe, I said, but I'm done living under ghosts. I reached over, took the flash drive, and looked at her one last time. If we don't expose him, he wins again. She nodded slowly. Then let's end it. We drove to the nearest police station, turned everything over, the drive, the documents, the recording. By sunrise, the FBI was involved. They found Miles's car abandoned 20 miles away. No sign of him. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Not joy, not relief, just quiet. The story made headlines within a week. Corporate fraud legacy exposed. Family empire built on lies and murder. They painted us both as villains and victims, sometimes in the same sentence. And maybe that was fair. Vanessa disappeared again soon after the interviews. No one knows where she went. Part of me hopes she found a new life somewhere, one not built on marble floors and broken promises. As for me, I sold the house, moved north, near Traverse City. I spend my mornings walking by the lake, and sometimes when the wind hits just right, I swear I can hear Frank's voice again, not the liar or the man in that recording, but the one I first fell in love with, the one who believed in building something good. If you were in my shoes, would you have turned everything in, even knowing it would destroy the legacy you helped create? Or would you have buried it, let the truth die quietly with the guilty? Sometimes I still wonder if I did the right thing. It's strange how quiet life becomes when the noise stops. A year has passed since that night in Gary, since the recording surfaced and the world learned what really happened inside Alden Industries. The marble floors are still there, the jets still fly, but the name over the building has changed. The Alden legacy, the one my husband and I spent decades building, no longer belongs to us. And maybe that's a good thing. The first few weeks after the investigation were chaos. FBI interviews, depositions, headlines. My phone rang for days, reporters, lawyers, even old employees I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted the same thing, my version of the truth. But the truth isn't tidy. It doesn't come in bullet points or sound bites. It comes in fragments, moments of guilt and pride, of love and anger, all woven into something too complicated to explain in a single interview. So I stopped trying to explain. I told the agents everything I knew. The offshore accounts, the fraudulent transfers, the years of quiet complicity that had let it all happen. They said my cooperation helped build the final case against Richard Miles, who, as it turned out, hadn't vanished. He'd fled to Panama, where the Department of Justice tracked him down 6 months later. When they arrested him, he didn't resist. He just looked tired. The trial was swift. He pled guilty to wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit murder. They gave him 30 years. When the judge read the sentence, I felt no joy, just an ache, the kind that settles deep in your bones when you realize justice and peace aren't always the same thing. Vanessa didn't testify. She appeared once, pale, quiet, sitting at the back of the courtroom. She left before the verdict. After that, she disappeared again. A few months later, I received a small package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Her standing near a lake somewhere, mountains in the background, wind in her hair, smiling faintly. On the back, she'd written 3 words in blue ink, "He can't hurt us." I cried when I saw it. Because for all the chaos she caused, Vanessa was still family, flawed, manipulative, ambitious, but human. She'd been trapped in a system that rewarded greed and punished vulnerability, just like the rest of us. After the trial, I moved north. The house in Hinsdale sold within a week. Every memory boxed up or donated. I settled in a small town near Traverse City, Michigan, renting a cottage on the edge of Lake Leelanau. The mornings here are crisp and clean. No boardrooms, no lawyers, just the sound of water lapping against the dock. Sometimes I sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the fog lift off the lake. The peace feels almost foreign, like I've borrowed it from someone else's life. The company was dismantled and restructured under new ownership. The board that once toasted Vanessa with champagne now pretends she never existed. My son, who had filed for divorce during the fallout, eventually reached out again. We meet for lunch sometimes. It's awkward, but it's a start. He told me once quietly, "You did the right thing, Mom." And maybe I did, but it came at a cost. The media called me the whistleblower widow. Some painted me as brave, others as complicit. I learned to stop reading the comments. But every now and then, someone sends a letter, a former employee, a widow, a stranger, thanking me for speaking up. It's funny, isn't it? You spend a lifetime building something you think will define you, and in the end, what people remember is how you burned it down. One evening last winter, as the sun dipped behind the frozen lake, I got another letter, this one handwritten, postmarked from Colorado. The return name made my heart stop. Vanessa Alden. I opened it carefully, half afraid of what I'd find. Inside was a short note, written in her familiar looping script. I've been rebuilding. Not the company, myself. I started consulting for small businesses, helping them avoid what we became. I used to think power meant control. Now I think it means freedom. Thank you for forcing me to learn that the hard way. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know, I forgive you for staying silent back then. We both did what we thought we had to do. Maybe next time, we'll both choose better. V. I sat there for a long time, staring at those words. Somewhere along the line, the two of us, the woman who fired me in front of 37 people and the woman she humiliated, had come full circle. Neither of us were heroes. We were survivors. A few weeks later, I walked into town for groceries. The local bookstore owner, a kind older man named Tom, waved me over. "Hey, you're that lady from the news, right? The one with the big company scandal." I smiled faintly. "I used to be." He nodded thoughtfully. "Must have taken guts doing what you did." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe it was just time." As I left, he called out, "You ever think about writing it down?" "Your story, I mean." I laughed. "Who'd want to read that?" He shrugged. "You'd be surprised. People like stories where truth wins, even if it hurts getting there." That night, I opened an old leather notebook and started writing. Not for the world, not for the papers, just for me. I wrote about the early days of the company, about Frank's laughter, about Vanessa's ambition and my pride, and the moment I realized silence can be as dangerous as betrayal. Each page felt like lifting another stone off my chest. Now, every few days, I post short pieces online, not under my real name, just L. Sometimes people comment, sharing their own stories about corporate betrayals, family conflicts, or quiet revenge. It reminds me that pain isn't rare. What's rare is surviving it without letting it define you. One morning in spring, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. It was from a law firm in Delaware, Fairview Trust. The message was brief. Final closure notice regarding RM Holdings. Remaining assets have been transferred to a charitable fund per federal order. Beneficiary designation, L. Alden. Attached was a certificate of donation. The account, every dollar of it, redirected to scholarships for women in business ethics programs. I stared at it for a long time, then laughed through tears. Somehow, even after everything, the money that had poisoned so many lives would now help others avoid the same mistakes. I printed the certificate and framed it above my desk. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that power, like money, is only dangerous when you forget what it's for. The lake is quiet tonight. The air smells like pine and rain. I keep the window open as I write this final entry, letting the sound of the water drift in. I think about Frank sometimes, not the man who hid crimes behind ledgers, but the man who once held my hand and said we'd build something honest. Maybe he believed that, at least for a while. I think about Vanessa too, her fierce eyes, her cold smile in that boardroom, the moment she stood beside me at the end. We'll never be friends, not really, but I hope wherever she is, she's free. And me, I'm still here, still walking by the lake, still learning what peace feels like. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that revenge isn't the opposite of forgiveness. Sometimes it's the road that leads to it. So if you've listened this far, thank you. Stories like this take hours, even days, to write and maybe longer to live through. But if there's one lesson I hope you take from mine, it's this. When the truth finally finds you, don't run from it. Let it hurt, let it heal, and let it set you free.